the more I've been listening to these type of people, it's just the people that haven't quit. It's kind of like with sports. Like, you go to college and play baseball. It's like, oh, I didn't have a good season, so I'm going to try football. Obviously, that's not going to go, oh, I might try basketball. It's like, no, like, you stick to the thing and you keep doing it. And, like, it's a clear path.
I think it'll be good. I was talking to the girlfriend a lot yesterday about podcasts and the direction we should go and stuff like that too. So,
what was the boss's 2 cents?
The boss. Well, we just, like you and I have talked to, it just continually comes back to what is going to, one, resonate with people, but also be something that we like and is beneficial for us and that we like to produce and wake up every day and put time into.
Mm-hmm.
So I think even just having conversations with Jackson was great. Like, my brother, he's running a business, whatever. Like, I had a great time doing that. I think some good content came out of that, which, like, I'm actually, like, pretty excited to share it. And made my first Instagram story maybe ever in my entire life.
Nice.
To post about it. So I think even doing more conversations like that, or even if we get like 10 people in here that are just random people, like your brother-in-law maybe, or like even just random people, and with the premise of, let me back up a second. I think we have to really, again, define like who we are, what is our brand, and then everything can kind of flow through that lens. And one of the shorts that's actually done the best for us was, and it didn't even have a title. I like fucked up and didn't even put a title on it. So no reason this should ever blow up, but it was one of the clips from when we were initially planning the podcast. And I basically said, you know what, dude, what if we just took like a satirical take on this thing and just called out that we're freaking entrepreneurs, that we haven't made money, that we like are the typical bros that want to make a shit ton of money but haven't yet.
Right.
And just that clip's like one of the most popular clips. I think we can almost position ourselves like that. Like, we can just have conversations with any random dude on the street, or like just other people like us.
Yeah.
Just have very candid, real conversations.
Almost as if like we're speaking for the millions of people in our shoes.
Exactly. And the way Lex and I were kind of trying to frame it is we can have two avenues that we rotate back and forth from. We can have, like, on one hand, we can have conversations with just you and I, and then other people in our similar situation, like just typical bros that are trying to make it happen, like Jackson or even other account executives or whatever, like kind of in that realm. And then we can have the other direction of people like Nate or Moore or Jed or people further along. So we almost have like conversations with people that are closer to where we want to get than we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And we can have conversations with people that are like where we're at right now.
Yeah.
And again, just like the framing is, we just like lean in hard to, we're just the typical fucking bros that like to talk about business and sales and making money and how to get better. And that's just what we do.
Yeah. You can't really argue with it either. I met with Jed, was that last week? It was last week. He was fired up about us doing the pod, and I was like, yeah, man, we'll have to have you on. And he was like, I would love to be on.
Yep.
So, I mean, we could totally position him as like former Silicon Slope CRO of the year, and just like not
totally
even that he's our CRO type of thing, you know?
Yeah, we can ask him questions about, if he were our age and doing what we want, like what we're trying to do right now, or we're account executives that want to make a bunch of money and are here to freaking crush it and build wealth for ourselves. so that when we're 35 or 40, we're in a spot where we can be financially free and independent. And we can, yeah, have people like Jed on that are further along in that. And we can have other people on that, like my brother or even my girlfriend's brother's great for conversation. He's so freaking funny. Like we'll have him on too.
Really?
And he's similar spot we are, like just 20-something-year-old kid that is obsessed with entrepreneurship and growth, but doesn't have a business right now and trying to figure out what the freaking path looks like, man.
I mean, what would be the value add for somebody listening to that other than just entertainment?
I think it's like a little bit in entertainment. I think it's context too of like, oh, there's other people out there like doing the exact same thing. I think
Yeah.
the way my girlfriend and I were talking about it, people really, it seems like, and she's in public relations at Disney and very focused on appealing to the younger Gen Z audience. The number of times I've heard Gen Z in my apartment in the past week is just obscene.
What are we? What is our?
We're millennials technically.
We're millennials. Okay.
We are right on the edge of
I was gonna
millennials
say, that's
and
why I was like, are we Gen Z or are we millennial?
Gen Z. You might be. I think. Shit, you're young. How old are you?
I'm in '98. What is the?
Dude, you're 98. Yeah, you. I think you're Gen Z then. Shit.
Millennial term you describe a person born. When are you? '96.
96.
Yeah, you're right on. You're the last year for millennial.
All right. So you're technically Gen Z. So all the people, what are you, 25?
Yeah, gotta be 26.
So yeah, 25. I mean, if we're speaking to 18 to 26-year-olds right now, they're right in Gen Z. And what seems to resonate with Gen Z in particular is just being real and just straight up calling things out, as opposed to millennials and older people are generally more politically correct and curated type stuff. It seems like Gen Z people are just like call it out, like, yeah, we're just fucking bros, man, that
Right.
don't make near as much money as we want to. So here we
Yeah.
are, sitting on Zoom calls at 7 p.m. at night and try and figure shit out.
I kind of like it too. Like talking with Jed last week, I kind of like had the assumptive thought that I was going to come in and ask him some of the stuff that we talk about of just like everything you just said, but he kind of came in guns a blazing about like totally just random shit about like he's got a new coach and his new coach is really big on like putting him through this diet and it's like a really restrictive diet, but the diet's like meant to train you on like like discipline and focus and stuff, and so it's like it's almost right. Like, it would be interesting just to see. It's like, dude, what does the CRO think about? Like, what are you working on?
Totally.
Everyone always asks you is like, oh, like what's if you could go back to being 25, what would you do differently? And it's like that's good, and I would generally want to know that, but like even just sitting there, like, dude, like what are you working on, man? Like, what does a CRO of a $100 million company do and think about? And it's like we also forget that they're fathers and they're just humans that have to eat and live and work out, and it's like this guy over here is an extremely successful CRO and he's worried about, oh, I can't eat this today, like I have to be focused, you know what I mean? It's just like it's not what you would think a super successful person is thinking about, but he's doing it because of it's making him disciplined, it's making him focus, it's making him learn to make trade-offs and sacrifices for certain things, and so like taking that approach too, thinking about it from like other founders, like they're brought onto all these podcasts being asked like, oh, like what's your go-to prospect, you know what I mean? Like, and those are obviously people want to hear about those, but there's also these questions that they're not being asked that I think would also set us apart, since like there's not a ton that we bring to the table, but if we're also exposing things that they're not typically asked, it's like, oh man, like I didn't know that this guy was thinking about X, Y, and Z. That was my takeaway from, because I came to the call and like 45 minutes into the call, I was like, dude, what the fuck are we talking about? But it was like a super good even like him and I both were like, dude, that was like the fastest 40 minutes ever. But like we talked nothing about business, or it was all just like a holistic approach about like health and like mindset. And it was kind of cool to hear that, this dude is in the weeds thinking about this every day.
It's kind of cool. I think even just getting other people's perspective on things, like for sure, it's so easy to think that other people are thinking something when in reality we have no fucking clue what other people are thinking. That always
Yeah, it's always
blows
like,
my mind.
I always thought about that in baseball too. I was like, dude, I bet this guy does this, this, and this. Like, that's why he's so good. And then you talk to those people, and it's like, they play video games every night, or like they're worried about like the smallest stuff that, like, if that was in your life, you'd be like, dude, what do you know what I mean? So it's like weird how high performers, I don't know how to phrase this, kind of compartmentalize certain aspects, whereas like we might be doing it in different areas. And that's why it's just interesting to see like what really is driving them to be where they are, or maybe they got lucky, or like you never know.
Totally. Yeah, that brings up a lot of thoughts ping ponging around right now.
No.
Because no, I agree with you. You know how that just like brings up this thought, maybe not relevant, but you know how when you see a girl that you've never seen before, or like come across a girl you've never seen before, like maybe you go hang out with your friends and then like one of their friends that's a girl like shows up and she's like a smoke show,
Uh-huh.
9 or 10,
It's the best.
and then you like start talking to them and they're like, yeah, she's all right. And then 6 months down the line, you've known her for 6 months now, and you're like, yeah, she's attractive, but it's not like this revolutionary thing like it was when she first walked in the door. You've never seen her before
Mm-hmm.
because now you know her. Now it's just different. Yeah, I feel this. I feel similarly about if we were to meet like one of our idols or whatever, like an Alex Hermosi. Like, granted, incredible in like a lot of ways, and like obviously executes on a different level, but he's just a dude too. And I think if we were around him enough, we would just realize that he's just a guy that's really good at some things.
I had like this epiphany too, and it was I might have been talking to you about it on our like last podcast, but it was some like real estate investing mogul, and he's obviously done extremely well. I don't know if he got inherited a bunch of shit or if he actually built it all. He could be a fraud. I don't know. But anyways, he was making content and posting these videos, and the dude was just a raging douchebag. And I was just like, I was like, if this guy can do it, I can do it. Just like hearing the way he spoke, and like, I mean, he wasn't intellectual by any means. Like the things he was saying, I was like, I read through the comments and everyone was like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? So like, I wasn't the only one that thought that, but yeah, I don't know. I think we like I noticed this in like sales too. Like we put people on pedestals for no reason. And it's like, dude, like they put your pants on the same way every day. Like it's just, there's people. And I think people like, once you start talking to them, like listening to another podcast, and this guy was I've been on a real estate grind, but he's like the most successful real estate investor, like of modern day, just based off of like his content, most popular, I should say. But even then, like just hearing him talk, and he was like just a dude, just a normal guy that has figured it out. And I think like the more I've been listening to these type of people, it's just the people that haven't quit. And it's like, and it's weird that when I was on church on Sunday, like that was the message, which was ironic. It was just like consistency. He was like, this is your message for 2024. And obviously he was talking about like faith, but I was like, it really is just the people that don't stop. Like whatever it is, like they just consistently show up. Like they're not great. Like some days are good, some days are bad, but it's like, I think like that is what I've started to like learn and figure out. I was like, dude, as long as you just show up, like if you just show up and you continually to do it over a long time, like you get that compound effect. But I think people I mean, we talked about this too, about the whole, you know, uninformed optimism, informed pessimism type of thing. Like people just get here so much and then they like write it out and they start the next thing instead of like just playing the game for so long. You know, like when like Panda Express's CFO or CEO or something, he's like 90 years old. He's owned the business for like 80 years. Like it's pretty hard to be unsuccessful if you do something for 80 years or 7 years, whatever long he's been doing it. So like that's just put a lot of things in perspective for me of like you just got to keep, no matter what happens, the people that are resilient and keep going, they tend to be at the top, regardless of outside circumstances.
Brings up a clip I saw the other day from My First Million podcast, or the My First Million podcast. Sam Parr, I can't remember the other guy's name. It's horrible. I should remember his name. But he was saying that when he was up and coming, before he started any businesses or had any wealth, he moved to Palo Alto and moved in with a couple of different guys, basically put himself in a community of people that were trying to do the same thing in the exact same spot as him. And he said all of the people that didn't quit made it eventually. And that some people it took them 1 year, some people it took 3 years, some people it took 5 years, but all of them that kept going and kept pursuing wealth all got what they wanted.
I think that's like the whole burn the ships thing too. Like if you really just gave yourself no other option. I know like I'm not David Goggins by any means. I know he's obviously Goggins, but like he always talked about like don't let yourself negotiate with yourself. Let me phrase that. Don't negotiate with yourself. There you go. And I think a lot of people do that where it's like obviously we've talked about like the if then statements and kind of getting rid of those if used improperly, but like we get in the habit so much of like, oh, I'm going to start this. I'm going to start a podcast. And then the podcast doesn't go well. And it's like, oh, I'm going to start, crypto investing. And that doesn't go well. Oh, I'm going to start real estate investing. Oh, I'm going to start whatever. And it's just like, you just allow yourself to negotiate so much of like, oh, like, maybe I'll try this or I'll do that. Like when this happens or this isn't going so well. So I'm going to try this. And it's like, you give yourself too many options type of thing instead of just like, no, this is what I'm doing. Maybe it's like an identity shift. Like I have no idea. I have to talk to an expert on that. But like if you really, it's kind of like with sports. Like you go to college and play baseball. It's like, oh, I didn't have a good season, so I'm going to try football. Obviously that's not going to go, oh, I might try basketball. It's like, no, like you stick to the thing and you keep doing it. And like it's a clear path. You have guardrails on whatever the thing is you're doing. You don't have all these other options. And I think like if you can learn the skill of just eliminating options and just saying like fuck no, like once you notice your mind is like we could do that with the podcast, like oh the podcast isn't doing so well, like let's try whatever. It's like no, this is what we're doing. I think like that has to be a common theme with high performers.
I don't know if I would. I don't know if that I would call it the skill of focus, but that's what I think of is just the skill of focus of being. And I don't have a problem with not being able to focus on work related things. I have a problem with focusing on too many work related things all at the same time and jumping back and forth between them. And to your point, it's super relevant with the podcast because I wake up every day and I'm like, oh, I have 3 different reels I could go produce or shoot. And, oh, I got to write the script for these. And like, dude, you have 3 hours of podcasts you need to go edit right now.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to film new reels? Like, if you wanted to just do reels, then go all in on that. If you want to do the podcast, go all in on that. But I'm speaking to myself, obviously, but if I try and invest 10% of my time in 10 different things, none of them are going to work.
But I think that's almost like a level above. Like that's good because like it's still confined into a podcast. So like I feel like you have to give yourself kudos there. But it's like if you were like, oh, I can make 10 reels today, and it's like, oh, maybe I could go whatever, do this thing on the side that has nothing to do with the podcast. I think that's where people get lost. Because then it's like the podcast is just completely forgotten. But it's like once you confine it to the podcast itself, then you obviously have to worry about. And I think that's where focus really comes into play. But I think where people get really lost is like they don't even narrow it down to whatever the thing is in general. It's like it's the podcast and it's this other thing and it's this other thing and it's this other thing. Instead of like getting to the podcast, and now you have to like, you know what I mean? Now you have little subgroups in that group. And obviously I think that's where focus comes into play, and that's definitely a high level skill.
Especially if you're scrolling through YouTube and every other video is titled "How to Make 10K per month,"
Yeah.
or "I scaled blah 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 to 20K per month, and here's how I did it." And then I watch those, and oh, that makes sense. I can do that. And it's something completely tangential, like a home cleaning business or some other shit. And yeah, all of those things could work with the right amount of allocated focus and effort to them, but none of them work if I'm continually watching other videos on how to make 10K per month and not grinding through the shit of making the one thing work.
Yeah, I think there's always a proxy for productivity that people like, oh, this is like, they try to justify it somehow. Like, oh, this is productive. Like, this is, self growth. How to learn how to make 10K a month by starting a cleaning business, because that's what smart people do. But really, like, once you kind of get some perspective of like, and granted, like, I don't regret doing the cleaning business. Like, if we would have done the cleaning business for 20 years, probably would have been pretty successful. But it was the fact that like we were doing a cleaning business and we were doing this business and we were also talking about starting something else over here. And it was just like, what were we doing? Like
for sure.
I think like that was the biggest fallback of everything there. But
yeah, I mean, let's break that down. If you got time, well, what time's your haircut?
I got a meeting at 2:30.
Oh, I got you. About 30 minutes.
Yeah, we got time.
Yeah, let's break the cleaning business down, man. We've had some requests in the comments to break the cleaning business down. It's been something we need to discuss for sure. I've got a bunch of learnings from it. But just for some context, Jake and I paid like $4,000, $4 or $6,000 to be a part of this community of people that were building home cleaning businesses, to where essentially you build the website and the marketing and handle the sales side of things, and then you subcontract all of the actual cleaning out to subcontractors. And so we joined this community that was building these businesses, and these people in charge of the community had done this in LA or something like that, and they were making a bunch of money with it. And there's other people making a lot of money with it. So Jake and I bought into this thing and started our own cleaning businesses. And end of 2022, I guess, September 2022, I think, was when I opened mine, and then ended up shutting them down at the start of 2023. So it didn't last super long, but let's break it down, Jake. What did you learn from your couple of months running the cleaning business? What were some of your big takeaways from that failure? Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I was just talking about, like, I just don't think we gave ourselves enough time in it to do it. It was just like, I don't know. I definitely had, like, I was dipping my toes in the water with it. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do this as a side hustle rather than like treating it as a business. And I think that's where people get really fucked, is whatever their quote unquote side hustle is they kind of put, 25-50% of their energy into it. And really it's just you're taking away energy from whatever the main thing is and putting half of it into something you don't really care about. And really it's like, yeah, I acquired a bunch of skills in the short amount of time I did it, but it just taught me that, like, one, keep the main thing, but then two, the biggest thing was just half-assing something that, and I didn't like have a clear goal of why I was doing it, or like what was my end goal with it. Like, I think that's I know it's kind of cliche, but like the whole Simon Sinek, start with your why. like, again, heard that in church on Sunday. Like, why are you doing whatever it is you're doing? Obviously, we don't need to get into religion a ton, but like, I never like sat back and was like, this is why I want to start a cleaning business. I kind of just was like, oh, I've always wanted to start a business. Let's do this. And that was it. Like, that was really the justification for spending $5,000 to join this mastermind group. And so I guess, like, obviously I have to like really dive into the main learnings, but yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway for that was like, if you're going to do something, and it's exactly what we were just talking about, like, devote yourself to doing it, or giving yourself a non-negotiable. I'm going to do this for 3 years, whether that's a new job or it's your side, whatever it is. Like, really be strict with yourself on how you're going to do it. First, like, obviously uncover the why. Like, if you don't have a why, then, like, I didn't have a why. That's why it was extremely easy to shut it down. But then really uncover the parameters on what you're doing. So it's like, it's very structured, and you're not just like, there was just no rhyme or reason to doing anything I was doing. Like, it was just throwing shit at the wall, really. So the more you talk, I probably will get some more ideas, but that's kind of the stuff at the top of my head.
I can echo all of those things. Absolutely. Not going all in was a big thing. I know for me, I was trying to invest an hour or two per day outside of my 8 to 6
Yeah.
corporate job. And so I remember being at the office trying to field sales calls for my fucking cleaning business. That was a horrible idea. I could never do that. That was stupid.
Yeah.
So not going all in. And I agree with you. I have no doubt that we could have made it work if we allocated the correct amount of focus and energy towards it. We just didn't. And it makes it really hard to make something successful when you don't allocate enough time or resources to it. The analogy for me would be trying to lose weight, but you only spend 5 minutes a day on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you put in a little bit of work, but the work that's required is in excess of what you are putting in. So that would be my first learning. The second thing I learned is we just had, like, I mean, roll back. The second thing I learned is just the importance of actually having something of value for people to purchase is of the utmost importance. And that was in my, I mean, it sounds so simple and like, duh, like, why the hell didn't you know that? But that was in I don't want to throw names out there, but that was when I was in a phase of following a lot of marketers and a lot of marketing gurus and how to build sales funnels and create right copy, like get really good at marketing, basically. So I was very marketing focused, and every time shit would hit the fan in the cleaning business, I'd have a clean go poorly or couldn't figure something out. I would think that I needed to market more and get more cleans, which in reality, like, the product itself sucked and the actual cleans were not going well. So I should have fixed that first, but I just dumped gasoline on my marketing fire and got a lot more cleans in and had a lot more things go wrong because of that. So I think we lacked a lot of skills to be able to see that, like a lot of skills in context to understand what was important in the business context. And I didn't understand the importance of the product actually being really, really freaking good, and just how important that is to make sure that is true first and then scale with marketing. I thought it was marketing, make the product better over time, when in reality it's the opposite.
Just marketing a bad product in
Yeah,
excess.
literally, it makes so much sense when you say it out loud and stuff like that. But when I was in the moment, man, it's like, oh fuck, I'm losing a lot of money. I need to get more cleans.
Just got to get more people that.
Dude, it's
Yeah.
so stupid.
No, I was fortunate that I had good cleaners. Like I got extremely lucky actually that I had good cleaners. But yeah, you mentioned it, and Jackson talked about this too. Like, and you hear it all the time from entrepreneurs, and I just for whatever reason didn't listen. But it was like you don't realize, and I didn't even scratch the surface like at all. But I think people don't even they can't fathom the amount of time and energy and attention it takes to starting a business. And like we started a cleaning business, and it realistically would have required 10 to 12 hours of our day realistically for it to take off.
To build
And
it
so like
right and get it
yeah,
to a
and
point, yeah.
so I like you always hear people like, yeah, I want to start a business, or I want to be like an entrepreneur, I want to start my own thing. And it's like, and you could hear it in Jackson's voice too, like the dude that's been doing it. It's like, bro, like you don't realize how hard it is. Like you don't realize the amount of sacrifices and the things you have to give up, and getting punched in the face religiously every day. And it's like, I mean, again, I'm not saying I went through this whatsoever. I'm just saying like it made me realize what you need to go through in order to really make something out of whatever you're doing.
And that brings up another good point. For me, one of the issues I had with the cleaning business is that it didn't it wasn't a big enough opportunity to motivate me or to put me in a state of mind to feel like going through all that shit was really worth it.
Yeah, no, had
And
no why at all.
if yeah, and I think it's so important to have really big audacious goals and things that you want to achieve because that makes it worthwhile. Makes it worthwhile to eat shit. I got like eating shit for a home cleaning business. That was never something I wanted to hang my hat on
No,
or I was ever going to be proud of, you know? And so I think when hard times did come up, it was easier to just say, this isn't something I really like want to do long term, or the ceiling isn't that high with this. Um, so that was another learning too.
yeah, and it was I just had something slip my mind, but like I don't think like the pain was big enough. Like it was like, oh, I don't feel like making an ad right now, or I don't feel like making this like opt in whatever funnel. Like I was like I'll be fine. Like whatever. Like it just wasn't. And kind of tying it back to like the weight loss thing. It's like maybe I wasn't. Maybe you're not fat enough. Like maybe you don't weigh much. Maybe you need to put on another 50 pounds before you need to make a change type of thing. And so like, yeah, I mean that was probably the biggest thing of just like, yeah, just no direction, no real drive for why I was doing what I was doing. Um, yeah, I had something else I was going to say, but I just dropped it.
No worries. How do you think the podcast is different?
Um, oh, that's what I was going to say. Uh, we weren't really selling anything that was like differentiating either. We were just selling a product that was just competing on price with everybody. And so like that also made me realize that, and kind of tying it back to your offer thing, like one, you have to like believe in your offer. Like if you're not believing in what you're selling, which I didn't, then it's like you're fucked regardless. But then two, it's like, especially in today's age where it's so competitive, no matter what you're selling, like we just weren't differentiating in any way. Like we weren't cleaning faster, we weren't cleaning cheaper. If anything, we were cleaning substantially more expensive for anybody else. Like it just wasn't. I don't. There just wasn't a real. I don't know. Like I just. If somebody asked me why do you charge $300 and they charge 100, I'd have been like, that's a hell of a question. I have. They clean the shit out of something. So that was another takeaway. But circling back to the podcast, realistically, it's not all that different. I think it. I think kind of just taking everything we just said and applying it to the podcast makes it so we don't do that again. Because like it doesn't matter if you do a podcast or you do some kind of side hustle, you start whatever it is, like you can have the same result. And I think it just kind of ties back to like this is what we're doing now. And then like after, and I think it's just playing it on a longer time horizon too, of just like you have to do it for such a long time to see any type of gain from it. And so like I'm not so worried about like if I didn't have a month worth of, you know, positive growth, I was like, fuck, I'm failing. Like I'm not doing something right. I got to market more. I got to hire more cleaners. Like I need to spend more money on ads, whatever it might be. But like now it's like I'm thinking of the podcast on, you know, like a 5 to 7, 10-year horizon. So it's like I don't care that we're not getting views right now. I don't care that we're not on Spotify's top 10 podcast lists. Because it's like I'm not playing on that same horizon that I was with the cleaning business. But realistically, like it's not all that different. Like it's still a thing. It's still, but I think it's just like telling yourself that like, no, this is what we're doing. This is what we're focusing on and fine tuning whatever is needed to be done towards that. And
Yeah.
not losing money every single day helps. That helps a lot.
I wholeheartedly agree. The way the podcast is different for me is a couple of reasons. First one that you hit on is longer time horizon with the cleaning business. I was trying to make 20K a month
Yeah.
in
I thought I
90
was going to make
days.
200 grand in the first year. Like,
Yeah, I was extrapolating that I was going to be, yeah, like you said, putting away 150 grand
yeah.
in profit for my cleaning business in a year. And I was working off those timelines, which caused me to rush and make really stupid decisions. Because I was like, oh shit, I got to scale this thing in 90 days. And it crashed and burned and was not good. So having the longer time horizon for the podcast has been great, and setting the expectation up front that for 3 years, man, there's no expectation. The only expectation is that we try and make each one a little bit better than the last one. And if we do that for 3 years, it would be unreasonable not to have a good podcast.
But I think the pressure is lower with a greater, well, I guess it could be a pretty great upside with the cleaning business if you really dove into it. But like, it was like gut wrenching being on a call for my main job and watching my phone ring, knowing I couldn't answer it because I was talking to a customer and was just like, there's $30 gone. And then another phone call and another phone call. So it was like, and then if you didn't close somebody on the phone, that's another, like the success rate was so low. So it's like you were just constantly and I know like that's sales, like that's just business as a whole, but like I think that's different from the podcast. It's like we can substantially improve our craft with every, episode, with every article, whatever, and not have to worry about like if this doesn't succeed, we lose $400. Whereas like the cleaning business was like, damn, if I don't book 3 cleans a day, like I'm fucked for this month. And like that makes it a lot easier to balance the reality of like paying the bills with the main job while focusing on this.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. I invested in a virtual assistant in the cleaning business way too early. I was spending way too much money on ads, and that exact feeling of feeling like I was like every month I was in the hole to start the month,
Yeah.
and so I had to make up. Is like you're at the casino and you're down $600 and you're trying to make it back, and that feeling is not in my experience, is not a great way to run a business.
No.
And so yeah, that's the other one with the podcast that's great, is that we're not losing any money by doing this. We've paid for like 3 things to make it a little easier right now, but those are not things that we're going to lose a bunch of money on. They're just one-time upfront capital expenditures to get the right tools in place. So that does feel good that we're not in a time crunch from a cash flow perspective of we have to go make money at this thing right this second. Um, the other thing for me with the podcast is that the ceiling feels so much bigger, so much higher than the cleaning business
Yeah.
does, and that the payoff of having a personal brand and a very successful podcast at some point in time, that payoff is worth the shit up front. It's worth a ton of work and effort and grinding up front because that's a worthwhile outcome, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a huge compounding effect, and I've said that a few times with the podcast that we didn't get with the cleaning business. 'Cause yeah, the brand I think is, I know we've talked about it, but like I think your social brand will be the next resume if it isn't already. So I think creating and building that, and I think it'll just, whatever we do down the road, I think this will just supplement that substantially.
Just makes everything easier to have some sort of brand out there and be recognized. I was even talking to Moore, my sales coach, about this last week, and he said, we're talking about cold outbound and generating more business. And he said the most important thing he's done is posted a bunch on LinkedIn, and then he interacts with people on LinkedIn that he wants to reach out to. And then after interacting with them for 2 weeks, that's when he sends a cold email. And that's the only strategy he has seen be successful from a cold standpoint, is to build familiarity first and then reach out. And in addition to that, 95% of his business is referrals.
Yeah, that's huge.
So you build familiarity, you do a really freaking good job, and then that compounds on itself. And then you can market to make up the difference.
Yeah, I think that's another thing too, is I think we now realize that you have to build something good before you spread the word about it. And so like now we're not so worried about marketing the podcast, where I think like, 3 years ago, Jake and Braden would have been like, do we got to post this everywhere?
Yep. Let's get some paid ads running for the podcast.
We got to get some ads running right now. We got to get some Google SLAs. Like,
find a spokesperson and pay them a bunch of money.
Yeah, we probably would spend ridiculous amount of money already on like Fiverr or whatever.
Yep.
But
we would have got editing up front, been like, let's drop like 10 grand to edit all these things and
some sick ass intro.
Yep. I'm with you. I know you got your meeting coming up here, bro, but
yeah, no, this was a good one. We should have some fucking ton of clips from this one.
We'll have a lot of clips from this one, dude. The podcast of Jackson, I'm getting like hyped up to share it out. That's
really
to that point of building a great product first and then promoting it. Like I said, I finally feel like Jackson's podcast is at a point where I feel good about sharing it with people, as opposed to the cleaning business where I would not want myself associated with that thing.
I got feedback too from Jed on like the offer too of like, and I asked him too, I was like, I mean, how would you respond to that?
Yep.
Like, I was like, I know you're not a huge social media advocate, but like even you as like a CRO, like if you could post 10 to 30 second clips on your LinkedIn talking about something, like he's like, I would. He's like, I don't see a world where people say no to that.
Yep. So like, that's it.
That was pretty good feedback. Yeah.
It's great feedback. We'll do it for Jed too. He posts on LinkedIn. He's trying to build a little brand for himself.
Yeah.
So.
That's what I think, just like having those kind of, and then I just think like talking about marketing and stuff, like even referrals, I think that'll almost take care of itself up front too. Like, where can I watch the rest of this conversation? Again, like we talked about that before. That's how I find most of my podcasts. But, yeah, I think once we have, Jackson posting a few of those, and yeah, we actually start having like a legitimate product to, I mean, that really is like our product. It's that first video. So,
yep. Exciting stuff.
All right, my brother.
All right. Go tackle that meeting. Bring her home. All right. Later, brother.